Well, okay. Good morning, you guys. Sorry for the delay. We had a little. Why does technology like to throw you curveballs? Can everybody hear me? Okay, Jared, you good? I want to make sure because we had a couple of little. Yay. Okay. Good morning, afternoon, evening, wherever you guys are in the world. I love having you join us. We're gonna have a fun show today. And it was super exciting launching AYP Plus. The first class was yesterday. Not too late to sign up, you guys. Those classes live on in a library. You can catch the next one live, but you can always watch those and rewatch them. There's a lot going on there. So we'll talk about that more later. Meanwhile, I guess we should, get things rolling here. So I am Marc Silber, photographer, author, educator in Carmel, California. And the show today is brought to you by our friends at Bay Photo Lab. And you know how much I talk about getting your prints made. Well, here's some cool things. You can get photo gifts, 10% off. And look at all these different things. You can get a face mask. You can get these are various different kinds of prints and even ornaments, 10% off on those. And you get 25% off in your first order. Get something made at Bay Photo. We love these guys. We've given away a lot of their products. Help them, help you, and help us. Okay, well, Jared, we're going to dive right in. Oh, don't forget to subscribe and enable the bell so you don't miss any of our shows, okay? This is like really important. So anything else I leave out, you just have to remind me. All right, well, let's dive in. I got your monitor up. And
All right.
what's the first question from Jennifer?
Yeah, so this is from Jennifer Faye Gao, who is lives in Australia, and she was kind of working on an experiment from earlier this year. And so back in the 70s, she did a lot of protest
Uh-huh.
photography, and she did that again this year. And the old ones are in black and white, and the new ones were in color. They were shot in
Interesting.
color, but she has redone them in black and white.
Okay.
And so kind of the question is for this experiment, I converted the images to black and white to see whether they convey a similar set of meanings. I'm not
Okay.
sure if they do. The issues are different, but I see the passion, commitment, and confrontation as similar. Opinions, please. So I think it's kind of the idea of taking
Yeah.
some of the old stuff that she had, and that was from the 70s, shot on film,
Do they
and the
convert?
new photos. And so I think this is like an example of one of the older ones,
Yeah.
and then I know this is an example of one of the newer ones. So,
So I guess your question is, do they convert over? Why don't you just scroll through them? Let
like,
me,
would this make a cohesive project? I think is what she's thinking. Like, you know, could you have this as an experiment where you have them side by side?
well, here's the thing. There are different dates, and that's going to be obvious, and that's fine. See, obviously, that isn't going to mix with your 1970 shot because that's not a 1970 truck. But if you're creating a photo essay, you could explain that, because if there's a huge gap of many years between the first set and the second set. But that's kind of sounds to me like maybe even part of your story is the contrasting elements there. So yeah, and obviously that's a modern sign, Commonwealth Bank. It looks different, but that's there's your earlier one of your earlier shots. So I wouldn't mix them together. I don't know. Maybe it's you could have if you find contrasting photos in your essay, you could do that. But yes, the answer is yes. They can definitely work together. It's
And do
going
you
to
think they convey the same kind of meaning and
well,
uh, feel?
your subject is relatively the same, and so your I think your contrast is what's changed over the years. This is one of the originals, I believe. Yeah, you can see that's a film camera the guy's holding up there. So there's various ways you can sort of determine the age. But that's going to be, Jennifer, that will be in your photo story, in your photo essay itself. You can tell that story. So that's how you would convey that. And
All right.
oh, hey, you know what, Jared? We missed my whole story.
Oh, you're right. We gotta go back and do that.
Speaking of
We were
which,
so busy getting diving in.
I know, which kind of answers this question. So,
Yeah, I think that's a good thing.
wow, we were like, uh, there's a word for that. I'm not going to say it, but okay, let me just get the right image here. So, this is kind of like the story of going back. This is a story of going back to the same place. This is Point Lobos, California. I live about 5 minutes from it. I captured this shot, I believe, in mid '60s. I don't exactly remember. I think the camera that I used, um, now that I look at the frame, I think it was a Plabel Machina. Pretty cool camera. And it captured a 2.25 by 3.25 negative. So if you look at it, you notice it's a rectangle. 2.25 by 3.25 is almost a medium. It is a medium format. And that has a lot of grain in it. I don't remember what film I shot, but that was Point Lobos. I was a young photographer, and I believe I had just gotten that camera. It was a used camera. I believe I got it as a Christmas present. It came with, it was pretty cool, and I wish I still had it. It came with a number of film backs, meaning you could switch the film around. I had a couple of lenses. Pretty cool camera. I use this as an example in my book on composition here. This book, for those of you who are not familiar with it, this is my book on composition. And I use it as an example of what's called a U-shaped composition, which basically is another way of framing a photograph. There's probably a dozen or so different ways you can frame a photograph. And this one has the effect of looking through a curtain almost at the main subject, which is the rock in this case. Then I came back, was it last year, Jared? Yeah, last year about this time. We were shooting videos to go along with that course. And we went back to Point Lobos. This time I was shooting it as a in portrait mode rather than landscape as the other one was. And it was shot with, I believe, my Sony A7R3. The branch has deteriorated badly, but you can see, it's just a different viewpoint of the same shot, and literally a different viewpoint. The clouds were a lot moodier. There was a lot of difference, between these 2 days, shot many decades later. And you can certainly do that with your photo stories. Go back to the same location. I have a short little film of me on Thanksgiving. A little sequence on how you can blend photos from many different decades together. Just tell it in your story. All right, so what do we got next here?
All right. So now we've got a photo here, and we had somebody asking. So they shot. So here, family reunion series, shot in black and white, edited in color. And I think it said I couldn't decide. So which do you think? So essentially, is this photo better color or black and white?
I see. Let's see them again. Let me move myself around. Let me look at them again. So there's your black and white. Okay.
And there's your color.
Which one
And
works
there's
better?
them side by side.
Let me see them again. Just this is really more you're going to have to answer that question yourself because you're telling a story of these two people who I assume you knew well. Personally, I like the color. I like here's my judgment call on color. Does it help you tell your story? And here's the reason why I believe it does. The color of her sweater helps, I believe, it tells that story. And also
The
really
sweater.
the backlighting in her hair. That's a significant point. And I think it gets lost in the black and white. Let's go back to the black and white. Let's see. It's there, but we lose those important colors. And I believe
Yeah.
you should leave it as a color. That's my call. But it's your photograph. I think it has a much more, what I get out of it in colors? I get the warmth because we're seeing, the love between them. But I feel like that color helps bring that out. Absolutely. Now that I look at it, yes, absolutely leave it as a color image. And do you see my reasoning? It's like,
Hmm.
do those added colors help you tell the story? Sometimes they distract from it, and then that's why it would be better as a black and white. But in this case, boom, the backlighting on the hair is just gorgeous, you know,
Yeah.
and a little bit on the child's hair as well. I, compositionally, what I would, you know, also would have been cool maybe if you took a step or two over that way to the left and you would have gotten more of the backlighting on the child's hair as well. That could be but you've got a bit of it, and I think you should definitely keep it.
Yeah. I
Okay.
can definitely see what you mean, especially with
Yeah,
going back to that. It stands
it
out way
loses it.
more in color.
It loses it for sure. So yes, keep it as a color image.
Okay.
We're telling the story of the love between these people. Let's enhance that.
All right. So here's a question from Dave Land. And this was a question for people
Coffee.
that print their work. So when you're selecting paper, do you choose different paper based on the individual image style, tone colors, etc., or do you stick to one paper across the board for your printing?
Okay, I don't know if you're talking about printing in
I
a
think he means in a
dark
book
room.
because he's saying I think it's like in a book maybe because I have some images that are quite vivid colors, some that are more subtle, and quite a few that are black and white.
Okay, so whether I guess the question is, are we printing in a dark room or are we printing on a digital printer? Do you stick with the same colors or not? I mean, the same type of paper, texture, and whatnot. It really, again, this is going to depend on your usage. If I am printing photos that are going to be seen separately, I can use whatever paper I want. If they're going to be seen side by side, it could be distracting to see different textures and whatnot. So I would probably print them together. These are points. Now, these are artistic judgment calls. So it's really hard to give you I can't give you a blanket answer to that. It's really about how is it going to be used? How is it going to be viewed? And what's your call? Maybe each print is going to stand alone, and you want to use different paper, completely different papers. And when I sit down with a master printer and I do that with my fine art work, we go back and forth on what paper do we want to use because a lot of times, actually, these are all standalone prints, so I can use whatever paper I want. But when I've done shows that are all uniform, many, many, many prints on the wall together, I'm going to use the same paper to keep it unified because it can be distracting to go from, whoa, this one has all this texture, this one's really smooth, this one's semi-gloss. You're getting a whole different thing going on. Think of it like music. In music, if you're going to record, you want to be good balance. You don't want like one instrument to kind of jut out at you or something in the recording itself to kind of like change the message. We don't have to go there, but here's the thing. It's that I would say that's your general judgment call is, are they going to be shown together or are they shown separately? If they're shown separately, you've got absolute freedom. If you're talking about, well, printing in a book, you don't have that problem because everything is going to be uniform. And by the way, printing in a book is really an interesting thing for us photographers because, man, do I get picky about how my photos are portrayed. And fortunately, our publisher was really great, Mango, and found an excellent printer who made my photographs look like the originals. And that's why, by the way, I love to have you guys have my physical copies because it's going to look really different than what you see in the PDF. Go ahead and get the PDF, but definitely get the physical copy. When we did the Create book, and I may change this in the next printing, because it's a workbook and you write things in here, we did not do a glossy print. And I don't know if people are actually writing in the book anyway. I think that if they take my advice, they're writing in a notebook. So I'm going to recommend in our next printing that we go to a higher quality, higher gloss. Because I'd rather have my photographs pop out. But those are interesting things that you get into when you do print your work. You want to think about how is it going to portray your image. And we're going to get into this in the AYP Plus shows. We're going to be talking with Dan Milner about creating blurb books and maybe even Bay Photo because they also create books as well. And again, with Bay Photo, you do have a variety of different surfaces you can choose. So that's also, a lot of options there. By the way, don't forget, Dan Milner's with us tomorrow. We're going to talk about creating a project. You're going to want to tune into that because I know most of you guys want to create projects, and Dan is the man on that one. Okay, what's our next question?
All right, our next question. This one comes from Jesharum. Hope that's how you say it. But tried my hand at abstracts during the lockdown. Would love to hear your critiques and comments. I'm totally new to this genre, so I thought we'd take a look at some of the images, and you could give some feedback on some of their work.
I like that one. That's cool. Listen, experimenting is a great thing, and you should always experiment. You should put some of your time towards experimentation. I'm reading this book called A to Z, The Beatles A to Z, and it was written by a guy who knew them very well and worked with them over decades. And one of the things that made that group so phenomenal is they were constantly experimenting and reinventing themselves. I don't necessarily recommend that you do that to that extreme. I mean, they were in a fortunate position where they had, such a massive following that they could afford to do that. Many artists do fall into, unfortunately, I have some, I'm not going to mention names, but some musicians that I love their work, but I can't tell the difference between album 1 and album 8. It just sounds like more of that same genre, whereas the Beatles really did experiment and constantly change. So go ahead and experiment. This is an interesting photograph. I don't know exactly what's happening here. Some kind of light is moving around or wiggling. Let's see the other ones.
I hear the other
And
ones.
sometimes, these fall into, this is a close-up. And, I am studying filmmaking in a whole new unit of time. And, there's 3 shots. There's 3 primary shots in filmmaking and in a photo essay. There's the long shot, which establishes, you've heard it called an establishing shot. It says this is where we are. Now, in this case, maybe we're at a barn or a farm or this is an orchard or whatever. I don't know where it is. See, I can't establish myself. So we could take a really wide shot, for instance, showing these trees. And then the next one, we come in a little closer. And that's like maybe on one single tree. Like the first shot, we had an orchard. Now we're coming in on one tree, so we're a little closer. You see that? Now we're really close on the bark of this one tree. That could be 3 still images. It could be 3 video images. But that's what, one of the things that we want to do when we're creating stories like that is we want to emulate, we want to do what a person does with their eye. They don't they don't start out from nowhere and all of a sudden magically appear, 8 inches away from this bark. They make a transition. So in our story, we can help them do that. So that is kind of how I see that particular image. Same thing with this one. It's like where are we? What are we looking at? This is a close up. Maybe back up and we see that we're in an old Adobe building or something. So that's how I see these images as part of a sequence. We call them transitional shots. They're part of a sequence. But for you guys who are going into, you want to create photo stories, and a lot of you do, I know. I'm going to recommend this book. It's called How to Shoot a Movie Story, and I do quote it in my composition book, in Advancing Your Photography, and in this composition book. And just because it's how to shoot a movie story, the technology of movie composition and movies in general is far in advance of still photography. You know why? Because it costs so much to shoot a film. These guys had to dial it down into such exactness that, okay, even on a big expensive still shoot, a movie could 10x that easily. So if you waste footage and waste time, it's very expensive. And there were the books and the technology far advanced still photography, and I believe you can learn an awful lot by reading books on filmmaking. So that's where that fits together. I'm going to do some classes on it because the best way for me to learn is to teach, and I wrote that in Advancing Your Photography. So what I like to do when I get into something new is I got to figure it out in my own head, and then I'll teach you guys, and it really helps me learn whatever it is. That's a little trick, by the way. Okay, so I hope that answers your question. Make it part of a story. What is next, Jared?
All right. Next is one a bit about it's this one. So these are
Oh,
my
yeah.
baby steps towards street photography. Would love to hear what I could have done differently. This is in Bangalore, India.
Yeah, I saw some of the comments on this. This is really interesting. Mode of transportation. Well, you've got frames in a frame here. You got two different frames going on, and the right hand one is a pretty complete story. These guys have got the whatever we call this, a tricycle. It's a tricycle, isn't it? And they're fixing it. The one entering doesn't complete the story for me. It's a little bit like I would just get rid of it, or I would step back and get more of it in motion. And I think what would actually work really well, pull back, include the whole trike in the scene, and use a slow exposure. Let it come by in motion. Now you've got contrast, and contrast is a compositional tool that works really well. And there's many ways you can contrast things. Again, in my book, I talk about all this stuff. It's in there. You can contrast things, black and white, we usually think of contrast, but you can contrast by motion and still. So those guys are working, and they're relatively still, but the other trike is moving into the scene. Oh, maybe it isn't moving. Actually, now that I look at it, I don't know if it is moving or not, but get it when it's moving. Shoot it at like a 30th of a second, get the motion blur. Then we've got kind of an interesting thing going on here. You see, we've got two frames that are very different, contrasting against themselves. Anyway, those are my thoughts when I look at it. Just, I would, again, experiment. experiment. It's really, but don't experiment so much that you're moving around all over the place. It's like, you divide your photography or your shooting time into, I'm working on my genre, I'm working on my story, and then I've got some experimentation I'm doing along with it. But maybe that's only 20% of your shoot, right? So you're not experimenting all over the place. You're kind of putting it in its own category. Or I'm going to go out today and I'm going to experiment. I do that with cameras. You saw me shooting with that Hasselblad. Well, that was an experiment. And you're never going to know how it works out until you try it. Maybe it's like, wow, this is a blowaway. I love this. And again, the Beatles were just remarkable because without all the modern technology that we have, like in Pro Tools, which is like, wow, off the chart. They were using a 4-track tape recorder. You have 4 tracks. Jared, how many tracks can you record on Pro Tools, for instance, or Audition? Let's
Pro
say
Tools, almost basically endless.
endless, right? And Audition pretty much the same. So you could have almost as many tracks as you want. Well, they had 4 originally, and it was a big deal when they moved to 8. It was like, wow, they went to a studio, not even their own studio, that because when they introduced 8-track, the studio they were working out of didn't want to use it right away because they had to run it through all their protocols, and the British are very conservative. But they found this other studio that just had started using 8-track. Imagine that. Wow, big breakthrough. 8 separate tracks, and before that you only had 4, and originally it's 2, and originally it was one track. But you hear artists like Jimi Hendrix, 4 tracks, and he's doing all these amazing things that we now do, digitally, like with ease on Pro Tools. But you're never. Here's my rant on that. You're never going to get that same magic because you are you're doing something emerging, and it's like for you it's really fresh. And it's funny, I wrote down on my notepad here, fresh, because it's something we should all think about. You want your work to be fresh. You want it to have some spark in it that's new and wonderful. That's something to strive for. And how do you get there? Watching, again, filmmaking, Ron Howard, who's done all sorts of amazing films. Apollo 13. He did the whole series on Da Vinci Code and the other ones that go along with it. Great filmmaker, child actor. And one of the key things, points he made is you want to get that freshness, like nobody's ever seen this before. That's a pretty cool thing that we should all strive for. Okay, I've gone way beyond talking about this, and I'm going to ramble. You put a microphone in front of me, I'm going to talk. All right, what's next?
All right, we've got this one's from Hannah, and she's been experimenting with editing, editing photos and processing, and has been posting a couple ones. And so here's one that, like, this was the photo that was taken, and then here is the image after the editing. And so she said, I'm still learning how to edit. I would appreciate some advice, and let me know what I could have done better.
Well, let me see them again. Okay.
So this is the original?
So this is unedited.
And then that's edited.
Yeah, I see what you're trying to do. Okay, so you're doing a local adjustment on the 2 women to bring them up, which is fine. It just needs to be a little tighter. Because what's happening, if we go back and forth, you can see you're also bringing up the water around them. So go back to the first one. Yeah. Okay. So look at the color of the water now. Now go to the second one, right around them. Yeah. You see how it's kind of like you got this too wide a local adjustment. And if you're in Lightroom, you just press Option, right? And you just delete. So you'd want to tighten it up around them. I mean, I see what you're doing, and that's a good thing to bring out their faces, but just tighten it up. And again, you're learning, so just go back in there. You can fix that. I don't know what program you're using, but that's how you would do it in Lightroom. You just take that mask, which you've created. Maybe you did it in Photoshop. I don't know, but whatever mask you want to tighten it up, so you're not also bringing the water up as well around them. The clouds. Okay, let's go back to that. Go back and forth there. Okay, so you've done something maybe.
And then that's
Yeah,
process.
dehaze or possibly. I'm not sure which slider you've moved there exactly. Let me see it again, back and forth. It's a little like maybe Here's the thing. Moving those sliders, and I wrote this somewhere, one of my books, but moving those sliders is like seasoning in food. I'm a big fan of chili powder, not chili powder so much as chili flakes. I use them a lot. I put them on salads. Obviously any kind of Mexican dish, I put it on there. But I put it in unusual things too. Maybe I'll just sprinkle it on steak. But here's the deal: I'm not gonna like go like that and cover my steak with chili flakes or cover my salad. My mouth is burning up. But a little like that, it makes it pop. So just be careful with the slider. I would just move it back. Just go back a little bit. It's just a little overdone. The other thing that could be cool is enhancing the sky, and you could use your gradient filter to make the sky darker. Try that out. You could just bring that down and darken the sky. But look, let's just forget all about all that stuff. I like the photograph a lot. It's just cute, with their hoods pulled over their face, and obviously they're, very affectionate, and then we're in this beautiful setting. So you've got a photograph here that has a nice vibe to it, nice story. Just tweak it. Just do those tweaks. Those would be the things I would work on. And look, what's great about digital editing is it's non-destructive. You can always go back and change it. And I do that a lot. Ansel Adams was known for, look, if you make the same print over a 40-year, 50-year period, are you going to print it exactly the same way every time? No, because your ideas change. Maybe I printed something really high contrast, back in the 70s or something. And now I'm like, I have the luxury of not just making the entire print super high contrast, but I can adjust it like using a local adjustment. And my tastes have refined or changed. So even musicians, you hear, this is why we like to hear different versions, the musicians that we love, and they perform their songs differently. Who wants to just sound like the recording over and over and over again? You're going to change your phrasing a little bit, or maybe the guitar riff changes or whatever, because variety is the spice of life, isn't it? Okay, that's one of those things that probably is true. Yesterday I talked about in the AYP plus classes, we have to be really aware of these everybody knows type things. We call them fixed ideas. Throw them away. Okay? Because those fixed ideas often, not often, they're wrong, and that's what prejudice is. Prejudice is a fixed idea. And we as a people have been evolving out of being prejudiced, and it's something we have more work to do. But the more we advance in that direction, the more civilized we become. Civilization is built on, should be built, when we really talk about being civilized, on tolerance. I am going way off the subject. But, I don't even know how I got there, so I'm not going to bother rewinding it, but you guys know what I'm talking about. Let's.
We got one that just came in.
All right.
And I'm sorry, but I'm a
I'm
native
cracking
English
myself up.
speaker, and two consonants are just, my mind doesn't know how to process two consonants. But the question is, I have a
Yeah.
composition question. I took this photo, and I know that I'm breaking the rule of space and the left to the right. So I think it's the
Oh,
rule
I see.
of, yeah, the space that they're looking into isn't in the frame.
Yeah.
But I've seen many great photographers breaking it. I get some bad critics about it, but to be honest, I like to play it and add interest. Makes us ask like what's outside of the frame. So what do you think?
Yeah,
So
let's see it.
basically,
That's a beautiful
should
photograph. Very sexy. Obviously very sexy. Amazing expression on her face. I think you got away with it. I get the point. We do make that point of, try to leave space where your subject is looking. But in this case, actually it does work. Again, look, shoot a bunch of different frames and then see, go move to the other side. So this is our experimentation point. Also, remember, you guys, digital is, whether it's digital or film, it would be easy to just move to the other side, capture that way. I make a big point. Look, here's the deal. Okay. When you're out shooting, you are just in the capture mode. You are just capture, 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 capture. Then you get back to your studio. And again, whether this is a film or a digital, you put on a different hat, and that's editing. That's why there's 5 sequences in the cycle of photography. There's visualization. You may have visualized it a certain way. Great. Change, you can move that around and you can be fluid with it. You know your equipment. Then you capture, then you edit. So in your editing phase, you look at it and you go, which one of these do I like better? Which one tells the story that I'm after better? And you make your choices. But look, this photograph works. You did a great job. I would, that would be my only thing. Just try it from that other move over.
All right. We've got one more from AYP Club, and then we have one from yesterday in our AYP Plus
Cool.
that we're gonna do.
Nice.
So this one's from Ellen, and so she had 2. This is a cropping issue, so she's wondering. This is, I believe, the original photo, and then this is it cropped, and she's wondering which is better. Should she crop or should she not crop?
Should I crop or should I go now? Okay, well, I was talking about music. You guys have got me in a funny mood this morning. Let's see them again.
So uncropped, cropped, and I can try putting them side by side.
I like the starburst.
I don't know how well that'll work.
No. Let's go back and forth. I'm going to say uncropped because it doesn't. Let's see. Yeah, uncropped. You lose some. You're losing something, and you got a little. Yeah. Leave it just like that. I'm going to advise you guys to not crop, as a rule. Now I crop all the time. So Mark, what are you saying? Yeah, don't crop. But I think it's a really good exercise to crop in the camera, and not in the editing. Having said that, of course, if you needed, like if there's the only reason I would crop this, let's say there was a wire sticking over on the right side, a metal or bar or a wire or fence post or something that pulled your eye over, get rid of it. But in this case, there's nothing pulling your eye over there. Your eye is pulled right to the starburst in the leaf. You had it. You captured it right. Don't, less is more. Don't crop unless you have to remove his distraction, right? Which we've talked about. And Dan Milner, whoa, he schooled me badly for suggesting that you could have cloned it out instead of cropped. Anyway, not that I would ever do that, but this works. Now here, having said that, there's a little tiny thing here that I would tweak. So the leaf, the starburst, awesome. So remember, look at the whole frame. Where does your eye go? This little tiny corner of the leaf that looks like a flag up there.
This?
Yeah. Up, all the way in the top. Top.
This?
There, right there. Okay. Notice how that kind of pulls your eye over? You could just do a tiny little adjustment on that and darken it. By the way, it's a lot of times it's a good idea to darken your edges for that very reason. So let's do a little edge darkening all around. See the right-hand top corner? It's brighter up there. So that keeps your eye from jumping out of the frame. So I would darken the edges. I would darken this little flag-shaped leaf. Boom. There you go.
All right. Well, I think that covers everything except for now. We have our AYP Plus question that we didn't answer yesterday because we had to do some research.
We did some research. Let's hear the question
So I
here.
think you could bring it over back to your camera if you haven't already.
Okay.
But the question was, and this was asked by Amy, but I think it works for a lot of people, and it's essentially how do you protect your equipment from winter.
Oh, yes. That is a good question. Winter. Yeah, that's right. Jennifer. Yeah, in California, man, hey, 45 degrees, that's really cold. It's freezing. We got to really buckle, get our jackets on. We're spoiled here. It does get freezing where I live sometimes, 30 degrees. I lived in Vermont, northern Vermont, minus 40. Wow, that was cold. Okay, Jared, you did some research on this, so what's the answer?
Yeah, let me make sure. Can people hear me? I saw Jared said that my sound got lost for a second.
Uh-oh. I hear you.
Here, let me see if
Are you guys
I'm waiting
still...
for it to catch up. You might want to make sure if my microphone is turned.
I didn't change anything. I didn't
It might
change.
have been set up and
It's still set here.
okay, people can hear me, it says.
Okay, good.
So,
So
or
bring up
I can hear
that.
myself.
We're still looking at the leaf. I think you've got a screen here of the answer, or no? Should I just go back to my...
Okay, so what we've got is hopefully if people can't hear me, let me know. Do you want me to bring that article up?
Yeah, bring the article up.
Okay, so the article here, and this is from Adorama.
Yeah.
And so the advice they gave was pretty good, I thought. So they were kind of talking about a lot of the different aspects, and we'll give a link to it.
Yeah.
And the different things to keep in mind. One, a lot of cameras are built nowadays to be able to handle colder weather.
Yeah.
So it's generally not an issue with the cameras, particularly if you're using newer ones.
Yeah.
Some of the things to keep in mind: cold soaking. So essentially, that's when all the warmth is gone. There's no more warmth in your camera, and if that happens, you're more likely to hit issues.
Yeah. I
So
can
even just putting it in a pocket or a bag,
put it
even
in
if
your
it's not a
jacket.
lot, it's something.
Yeah.
Actually, they kind of talk about that a little bit. We'll get to that because it covers another thing. Memory cards aren't really an issue,
Yeah.
but if you do have a compact flash micro drive in your camera, which isn't very common these days.
Yeah.
But if you do, that's a mechanical memory device.
I
So
don't.
when it gets cold, it's not
Yeah.
going to work as well. But the big things to be worried about would be plastics tend to
Yeah.
get brittle.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and so you need to be careful when you're trying to work with hinges and coverings, like trying to open the battery door, which you're going to have to do because moving on to batteries don't work as well when they get really cold.
Yeah.
And like Daniel said, take two batteries. He just said this in the comments. Keep one in your pocket.
For
That's
sure.
what they recommend, and they recommend bringing them in and out as you can. Once again, being careful of the plastic hinges.
Yeah.
And they even had another suggestion if you're from the Midwest or other colder areas, you may be familiar with hand warmers. And so it's a little thing that you can get that generally you would put in
Muffins.
like your
Muffles.
glove.
What do you call those?
Hmm?
Yeah. The hand warmers. Yeah. Oh, do you mean
Yeah,
the
yeah. So
chemical
they're like
ones?
a little pack. So it's like a
Yeah.
little
We use
pack,
those
and you
skiing
open
and
it.
snowboarding. You put them in your jacket.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So you can get those, and if you wrap it around the compartment
Oh,
where your
interesting.
camera battery is, that can help a little bit.
Okay,
So they
that's
give a
interesting.
suggestion for that.
Yeah.
Um, Obviously, be very careful of metal. Do not
Yeah.
touch metal with your exposed hand, because that's going to lead to some nastiness.
Dumb and Dumber. Who remembers that scene?
Yeah. Uh,
Oh boy,
and
what a
so
movie!
so hand warmers
There's
are
your
great
reference
bit.
on that.
Generally, and once again, it's talking about how cold is too cold. Most cameras will work up to 32 degrees Fahrenheit, 0 degrees Celsius, and most of them will go below that too.
I
It's
hope
generally
so.
the batteries, and then your LCD may not work quite right
Yeah.
under really cold conditions, but it should correct itself once it warms up.
Well,
Obviously, you should be.
let's leave that for folks to look at. You
Yeah, I
guys,
would say here's one bit that we should talk about
okay?
because this could be really important for people. And Daniel brings it up a little bit in the chat. That's coming in from the cold
Oh yes, good point.
because it's going to be very humid. There's not much air. And
Yeah.
so it's cold and humid. And then when you get into a more moisture environment and and it's warm, you're going to start getting condensation on your equipment,
Right. That's
potentially
so
on the
true.
inside. And as we all know, electronics
Do not
and
like
liquid
water.
don't work well.
Yeah.
So they gave a great suggestion, which was if you to avoid the problem, you can seal your camera gear in airtight plastic bag before you bring it inside.
Oh, okay.
Then it will only be surrounded. You may get some condensation on the outside of the bag, but the camera and the lens will slowly warm up in the dry air inside the bag and will stay dry.
Boom.
And so they give some other advice on ways that you can more warm up your equipment. There's lots of other tips in this. So I'll be leaving that in the chat and in the description if you're watching the playback.
All right. Cool.
But they also warn that you could potentially have that exact same issue if you put your camera in your coat,
Okay.
especially if you've been sweating, which can tend to happen.
Sweaty
So
camera, not such a good thing.
yeah, so would have a word of warning if you're used to it and you have a system that works well for you, then that's great for you. But just keep that in mind if you're going to be putting your camera into your coat, especially if you've been sweating, you could be getting liquid or condensation onto your camera, and we don't want that. So.
Okay. Good. So you guys check that article out. Before we wrap up, are there any other questions that came up during the our show here that we should pick up, or did we
I
cover
don't
everything?
think so. I think we pretty much covered it all.
All right, cool. Well, let's just talk about a few newsy items here. So again, Daniel Milner tomorrow. You do not want to miss a moment of Milner. How about that? A moment of that man, Milner, the damn man. You never know what he's going to say. We're going to talk about projects. I don't know what's going to come out of his mouth, and I know something is that you're going to enjoy. So definitely tune in with us tomorrow, right? 10 a.m. Friday, we moved because Dan could only do Thursday, we're swapping our critique show for Friday. Make sure you guys get your photos in there. Let's do a bunch of critiquing, okay? I always enjoy that. AYP Plus, if you are not a member, you should join, right? For you guys who were there yesterday, maybe you could let these guys know why they ought to be in. I mean, we just had class number 1. We're going to do one of these every week. It's the best investment you're ever going to make. I mean, come on. Right
And
now
we
we're
have a new way. We have a new way to pay that people may not be aware of too, right?
yeah, you can break it into 4 payments. We're keeping it's called we had Cyber Monday. We're calling it Cyber Week, and we're keeping the discount in place. For $97 a year, you get the whole thing. How much do you spend on coffee a year? How much do you spend on popcorn when we used to go to the movies? Okay, not even for the price of a year's worth of coffee are you going to get a year's worth of education that's going to advance your photography. But you can break it into 4 payments. I don't even know why we're doing this, except I want you guys to be part of this. I want to make it as easy as possible. So, Jared, there it is. If you haven't joined, please do so. I really want you guys in this community. I'm going to obviously keep doing what we're doing here for free, but it takes a lot more work, and it's part of you helping me help you. This does help support the whole AYP community as well. So your contributions, your payment towards this helps us bring this kind of show to you as well. Okay, that's AYP Plus. So what do we got? We got Dan tomorrow. We've got critiquing on Friday. And we're going to do another AYP Plus Tuesday at 10 a.m. That's our next one. That's going to be awesome. And bam, we start the master class this week as well, next week. Next week we'll have our first master class. So if you want to go way up to the tippy top of, me working with you personally as part of this group, the master class group, that's where you want to be. Okay, we're getting near the end of this year. Can you guys, we're into the second day of the last month of this crazy year. And
Thank goodness.
let's all put our hands together like this and really, hope and pray that all those things that have been broken this year, we get fixed ASAP as soon as possible, if not in the end of this year, early in the next year. We're really hoping the vaccine does what it's supposed to, and that it can be brought to people quickly and smoothly. I grew up as a child, and so I have some experience with this in the polio era, which was devastating. My sister had polio. The President of the United States, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, had polio. And I grew up as a little kid before there was a polio vaccine, so anybody could get it. It was terrible. And then I remember going to the local high school. We got these little sugar cubes with the polio vaccine on it. Boop, like that, and it was gone. It was over and done with. We didn't think about polio anymore. It was evaporated. And, I'm really, again, hoping we have that same, response, and it goes as smoothly as that. But we've been through this. We have wiped out disease. We have, eradicated these plagues before. So this is what we need to do. Okay, meanwhile, you guys stay creative, stay safe. Remember to subscribe and enable the bell so you don't miss any of these episodes. We've got some crazy cool stuff we're going to be doing. Why am I studying filmmaking all over again? Well, you'll find out in 2021, maybe at the end of this year even. Leave your comments, like, share, subscribe, do all those things. And say it with me, folks. Remember to get out and capture your own images of life. Capture life. Stay safe, stay well, stay creative. Love you guys. See you tomorrow. Okay?